Welcome everyone to another CTC software webinar. My name is Chris Bircher, Director of Technical Services here at CTC, and today we are going to do a deep dive into the CTC Nexus CMS or Content Management System and make sure that you see what it's capable of doing and how it can potentially benefit you in your firm and enhance your day-to-day workflows. But before we get into all of that, this is being recorded, and I encourage everyone to ask questions throughout the webinar. If you are attending live, I will be monitoring the questions panel and answering questions in line as I present today as we talk. When it makes sense, and we'll make sure to take time at the end to answer any remaining questions that I missed. If you are watching the recorded version on our YouTube channel, please ask your questions in the comment section, and we monitor those as well, and one of us will get back to you in a reasonable amount of time. Make sure you have everything you need. With that said, let's get into it. Now, a key piece to a successful Revit project is good content management. And if you've been in the industry for a while, you know that good content management has been kind of a big deal as of late. Like, there's a lot of different ways to do this and a lot of different apps out there to help you with your content management. And you know, the whole point is just to find ways to organize your content in a fashion that makes it easy for everyone to find, your users to search it, to see it, to investigate it before they even insert it into their projects. You know, today, without some type of a CMS, oftentimes you bombard your project files with tons of content, either in your template and starter project files, or everyone's just loading stuff in because they don't really know what it is, and they spend a bunch of time doing that, placing the item, finding out that it's the wrong item, deleting it from the view, placing something else, but until they find the right thing. But they're not necessarily purging it out of their projects after the fact. So it ends up taking longer to find something, and now maybe your project file size suffers because of it. So today, we're going to show you our content management system, or our Nexus CMS, and show you its abilities, what it can do, how it can help you and your users at your firm get access to your content, make it easier to find it, easier to make it available, and a bunch of different ways to get access to some of the metrics that come from it, and how to set it up, and kind of a little bit of everything today. So, oops, wrong way. So I'm going to show you the basics, get you a little bit familiar with the UI today, and we're going to take a look at the portal and how to set some of this stuff up, manage users, manage accounts, manage libraries, show you where to access some of the metrics, and kind of get you familiar with how our CMS app works inside of Revit and Civil 3D. Now, before we do any of that, we kind of need to talk a little bit about what Nexus CMS is. CMS stands for Content Management System. That's what it is at its core. We built a content management system to make life easier for the admins or the BIM management team to make content available. And then it's also there to make it easier for the end users to find content that is readily available. It supports content, or it supports Revit. It was originally designed to work with Revit. It also works in AutoCAD and Civil 3D. So if you are using both Revit and CAD-based applications, or you're an AutoCAD/Civil firm, you can utilize the Nexus CMS in your working environments and get lots of access to everything. You can also use it to store your document standards or your drafting standards or your BIM manuals / execution plans. It doesn't have to be just Revit and CAD-based drawing files. It could be Word documents, Excel files, small videos, links to videos on your intranet or on YouTube. You can also store your template files, your DWTs, your RTEs, or starter projects. So there's a number of different use cases here for this, and you have the ability, regardless of what you're working with here, to kind of create content collections in a sense that can be in this batch loaded into a project file. So there's a lot of different things that we can do with this, a lot of different documents that can be stored, all of which can be easily searched. And I'm going to try to highlight that for you today. So we're just going to jump right into it. If you've seen my webinars before, you know I'm not a big fan of PowerPoints. So we're just going to get right to it. I'm going to start in Revit for this. I will show some CAD and Civil. Or Civil, I should say, but it's that part's basically the same across the board. So this is the CMS app, and we're going to start here, show you the interface, show you kind of a little bit how it works. We'll jump into the portal in a little bit and show you some of that side of the things too. But for the CMS app, this is your landing page. This is the first thing you're going to see when you fire our CMS app for the first time or the third time if you've ended up closing it. A couple of different ways you can start accessing your content. Initially, you can search here right out of the gate, and if whatever you search here is going to search all of the libraries that you have access to. That's your content libraries, that's anything you've subscribed to, and because there's a couple of subscription libraries out there. There's some public libraries that you have access to that may show up in this list. And that's just right out of the box. No filters applied. It's a good search. So I searched double, and the most common family in my case is going to be my double doors or any type of a double door. But I also have double base cabinets. I've got double wall detailed, actually that looks like a family. But you just start scrolling down, you can see I've got some other stuff posted here. And I know if it's mine in this case, because we have little library icon thumbnails put in place. So I'll know if it's either mine or if it came from somewhere else because it doesn't have my logo. And that's one way to kind of determine, or it doesn't have a logo necessarily, right? We have some flexibility there to make it a little bit easier to determine if it's yours or not. And at this point, if this is something that I wanted to use, if I found the family right away, I've got a nice load button here that I can just click it and it's going to load it into my project right away. And if I'm in a view that supports the placement of that item, I'm going to get prompted to place it right out of the gate. In this case, I'm not in a view that supports that, so I'm going to switch views here real quick. And I pin that open so it doesn't disappear on me. I'm going to switch to a floor plan. And now when I say, let's grab this pocket door, if I click load, it's going to turn around now and give me the opportunity to load. It's going to load it in. And in this case, it's upgrading it because it's not a 2024 family. And it's going to invoke the door placement command, giving me the opportunity to insert it right away into my model. But at any rate, now I'm in my door placement command. I can go ahead and click on any wall to place it, right? It loaded it in. Oh, sorry, I don't know what my little hiccup was there. But now I have my door. Oh, it wants me to save that. So I have my double door, my pocket door, inserted it just fine. This is exactly what I would have expected. It's the same family. And now I get the opportunity to go ahead and move on and do other things. Find another family, but maybe at this point, maybe I wasn't looking for a double door. Maybe I was looking for something else. We have or I'm seeing content from other libraries that I didn't want to see, or I'm seeing CAD content that I shouldn't be seeing. So we have a bunch of filters here. Now, potentially the first time when you open your CMS, you're not going to see the filters. So you would click the filters button here and it will open the pane. And you have the ability to pin it or unpin it. So if it's unpinned, it's not going to show up. And then you can just continue to click the filters button to get access to what you want. And then as you click away, it's going to disappear on you. That way it gives kind of more visual real estate. I like having mine pinned open. I tend to work with it quite a bit when I'm looking for content. So I always typically leave it open, but you're free to do what you want with it. The first thing right out of the gate is access to the libraries. Now, there are two sets of libraries that you have access to. There's going to be your libraries, the ones that you create for your organization. And then there are public libraries. And these are all the other libraries that you have access to, in many cases for free. And in some cases, there are some subscription-based libraries that you can pay for if you'd like. So for the public libraries, we have things like all the out-of-the-box content. And I'm talking all of the out-of-the-box content. And because there is so much of the Autodesk stuff, we don't want that library for you getting hidden. So you can actually pin that library to the top of the list. That way it makes it easier to find. And when you do your search, it's going to look for that first instead of looking for, say, the Chinese library first, for example. So that's kind of the purpose of the pinning here, is to add some priority to it and to make it easier to track down. Same thing on your libraries, right? If you end up with a handful of libraries and there's one that you're constantly wanting to prioritize over the other ones, you can pin it. Shows up at the top of your list, and it makes it a little bit easier to track down as you're going through day to day. Because you can end up with a handful of libraries quite easily if that's the breakdown you want to handle. And we'll get into more of that discussion here in a little bit. So you can check the library that you want to search through, and it'll show up here. We also have tags. We'll get into talking about tags here in a little bit, but you can also assign tags to your content to make it more, to give it another search term. You have filters if you do both CAD and Revit, or you've been using it to store a bunch of documentation and project assistant files, Excel, Word, PDFs. Maybe you just want to search Revit, so you can go ahead and do that. And then we've got a bunch of other search options here for filtering by unit, filter by Revit category specifically, maybe a specific version that you're looking to get through. And then we have AutoCAD filters, same thing down below. Now, if I do it this way now, and then maybe, well, let's just see what happens. I'll click apply. List has changed a little bit. So let's go ahead and add another term to this. And let's just add cab to the end, double cab. And nothing really changed here. So maybe I want to isolate this down even further. So we can add some wildcards to this. So there's different wildcard search terms that you can add, like the plus sign to say double plus cab or cabinet. Or, maybe you want to define just an Autodesk family, right? So if I take a step back, we'll clear my filters. Maybe there's a window from Autodesk that I wanted specifically. So if I can do window plus ADSK, and I know, and let's do this. We're gonna set it that way. There we go. And it's only pulling up my windows, right? So there's a couple of different ways to set your filters to get certain things to appear appropriately. Maybe you could use minus in the term, which means you could say single minus swing, which would filter out anything that had swing in the name. So like all my door families are gone now. So I get my cabinets, I get my receptacles, I get my switches. There's a couple of different ways to go about doing this, but not everyone's going to remember what those are, what those terms are, or what those wildcards are. They're all documented in our user guide and how to set that up. But as it's for you admins and anyone that wants to go find them down or track them down. But what you can do at this point is maybe you want to distribute this search to your users. And let's take it a step further, and maybe I'll just say, let's just do my Revit content there. And let's say I want to make this available because really it's these 4 families that I want them to see first thing. Those are what I want them to have access to. We'll say only Revit content, and I can save a search. You can narrow it down to the nitty-gritty as much as you want. You can even source a particular category if you knew what categories those were. And if you don't, you can always check the details on these too. If it's a right-click on the item, go to the details, and there's information about it. What category, units, the versioning, what types are listed and available. So if I wanted to make this available only, not the details, not the schedules, not any of the other doors that are present, I can narrow it down a little bit further and say, let's just talk casework. Oops. And then I can save this. Any search that you make with any filter applied can be saved. And you can call it whatever you want. Let's just call it lab cabinets. And that can be just for you, or you can share it with anyone. And this applies for anything, right? We're searching Word documents, we're searching templates, we're searching Revit content, you're searching CAD and Civil content. And at this point, I can either save it for just me, and then this is my search. If I'm an equipment planner and I'm constantly looking for these families, now I have a quick way to find them and isolate those. Or I can share them with everyone in my organization or a select group of individuals. So I have a select groups option. I can do everyone, and that means everyone that has access to our CMS will have access to that safe search. Or I can find my architects and just say, you guys get access. Or maybe I can find my equipment planners and say, just you guys get access. So for today, I'm going to go ahead and just use, I don't have equipment planners in here. That's okay. So I'm going to give it to my architecture team and hit save. And users in that group now will be able to go back and utilize that safe search. There's a couple of different ways to find your searches. From your home tab, by default, there is a saved searches button here that you can click on to find your content, or to find access to the searches that have been shared, whether it's the ones you've made or the ones that have been shared with you or that you have shared. And here's the lab cabinets one that I just made. I can click on it. Here we go. But if you notice, there's a bunch of other ones here too. If I go back, we have stuff for document standards and Revit templates, CAD templates. I've got a bunch of other safe searches for AutoCAD alignments and parcels, but then Titus equipment, MEP schedules, various diffusers. So we have a way to create these, whether it's unique to you, like this one is unique to me because it doesn't have a kind of this group icon. And you also get then access to it in this drop down up here. So you don't need to click this, but because it's all right here too. And it's the same list that you saw before. And if you click on this here, it's going to bring you to what you see. Just like that. So I grabbed CTC doors. Now I've got my doors. So there's some flexibility and how you want to save some of this stuff, right? Whether you share it with a certain group, everyone, or it's just yours, just for you. And one of the features that I kind of like is that I've actually don't utilize a whole lot right now, just because I'm not in the trenches like you guys are, is favorites. We have the ability to mark content as as favorite. So, and then you can search for it using this little heart here. So what I want to do is I'm going to go back to my door and show you this. So if I go into the right-click menu for this particular door, I can mark this as a favorite. If I'm constantly using a family or a series of families, mark it as a favorite. That way, instead of remembering which safe search you used to go find it or what term you used to go find it, or instead of just navigating through the list of Revit categories to go find that door, you can click on the heart and it's going to show up in your list of favorites. And that holds true to any item that's in the CMS, including documentation files or supporting documents. And it's just a really quick way to get back to something that you found before or something that you're using on a regular basis. And if there's a number of families in your favorites or in any of the searches, you can select control or hold down control and select those families, or hold down shift and grab everything between two items, and then right click, load those families into your project. It's a great way to batch load a bunch of stuff in without having to, one at a time, double click or click the load button or right click load, right? So if you did have a kind of a multi-family housing collection of content that pretty much is always in that type of project, build a safe search for it, go find it, hold down shift, select all the content, right click load. Now it's all in your project. A couple of different ways to make it easier. Otherwise, you can just individually hand pick the ones you want, or hold down control and hand pick the ones you want. Load them in that way. The whole point is just to make it easier for you to track things down, whether it's by search term or making safe searches available to your users. Now, I want to switch over into my civil product here real quick. And one of the things that I want to explain right out of the gate is how CMS can transition between like Revit and AutoCAD, or Civil 3D and AutoCAD, or Revit and Civil 3D for that matter. It's constantly checking for the design app, or what's the active design app. And up here, once you're outside of the home page, the design app's listed up here in the top corner, and whichever application is set current, our CMS is going to know that, and it's going to pick that up. And now whatever I attempt to load here is going to try to load into that application. And actually, ding, 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 the reason why it was so slow before was because it was trying to load into Civil 3D. I bet you that was my active application. I'll have to check the tape later. But now that I've got Civil open, I'm looking at a bunch of Revit content though. So I need to take a step back and reset my filters and my search terms. So what I want to show to now is the AutoCAD filter aspect. So again, I can pick a particular CAD or civil-based library that I've made available, or that we've got made available to us. I can also expand my AutoCAD filters and just say, give me the AutoCAD stuff, maybe a specific CAD-based category that's in my collection of content. So right now, I'm not going to search for anything. I'm just going to go ahead and click apply and see what we're ending up with. So right now, I get some styles. I get, looks like a couple plan views. I also get all of my settings files for Label Genie because we've got those loaded up in here too. So I'm actually going to go a step further, and we have the opportunity to specify file extensions. And this works across for anything. But I don't want to see my label, any of my settings files. So I'm going to force feed my DWGs, my DSTs, my DWTs, and I think for now that's probably good enough. Click apply, and it's going to change this a little bit. Now I could have done it a different way and force fed a library to this as well. But I also wanted to make sure I pointed out how that the file extension aspect is an option as well. And now you can start to get an idea of what's in here. Now, depending on what some of these items are, you may or may not have a preview image associated with it, and how, whether it's CAD, Civil, or Revit is, and how their API is trying to generate that thumbnail for you. If you don't, you can always assign custom preview images, right? If it's blank and you can't figure out why it's not happening and why our tool is not able to extract that out of CAD or Revit, you can always add your own. Or if you're not happy with what the preview looks like maybe you don't want it to be this sheet set manager icon, change it to something else. It can be any picture, any icon that you choose. You have that flexibility to make adjustments, and then it'll hold that way for everyone else that searches that item. So I'm going to search for curb right now, and I get a bunch of curb based styles, but I also get some assemblies and sub-assemblies and other details and blocks to choose from. Now, where the benefit of this comes into play is if I just right click and load this into my civil project here, is the whole point of utilizing a CMS inside of an AutoCAD or Civil 3D based application is to help make life easier, A, for the users, but B, for the management. Setting up tool palettes and maintaining tool palettes from version to version and year over year over year can be time consuming. It can be painful, and making sure everyone always has access to the folder locations, or making sure that content is synced up to people's machines, especially if they're traveling around. That can all be very time consuming, and a lot of extra setup and customizations that frankly take a lot of time every year to maintain. With this, you can extract the content off your tool palettes, make it available inside of the CMS, and then make it available to all your team members. And you don't need a tool palette for that. And or hopefully that takes away the use of using Design Center to find blocks or styles and stuff from other drawings. So you have a lot that can be done here. And if you look at the categories list for Civil 3D here, we have styles galore. If you can come up with a style inside of Civil, it can be processed and made available in our CMS. Assemblies and sub-assemblies, parcels, various blocks, whether they're stored in a tool palette or their own individual DWG. There's quite a lot that can be done here with this. You can also insert any CAD drawing at any time. List files can be stored here, and those lists will then get run inside of the drawing. You can also add command macros. So there's a couple of different unique pieces to the CAD and Civil side of things that you wouldn't normally need inside of a Revit document. Oh, excuse me. Lastly, we can also take advantage of Dynamo files, Dynamo routines stored inside of our CMS. Now, I believe I even have a Dynamo library here that is not set to specifically show Dynamo, but I can set my filters up too. And you can store your Dynamo routines here, and if they're supported in the application that you have set current, you can use them there just by double clicking them. Now, one of the key factors that we run into with any firm using Dynamo is just making sure that the end users have access to the custom packages that were used to build this routine, right? If they don't have access to those packages, routine's not going to run very well. Now, if all of your stuff is self-contained into its own Dynamo routine with your custom Python coding and custom nodes, great. Then it makes it really simple, less to rely on, and you can just load from here. And if it's intended to run, it'll run. So it's kind of slick. But now I need to pause from the CMS UI, and we need to switch gears a little bit. I need to jump into the portal and show you a little bit about how some of this stuff is set up. Let's get rid of that. Now, our Nexus CMS looks to the CTC portal for a lot of information to function. All of that information is right here on your CMS tab. So once you download a trial, or if you've got a license of Nexus Suite already, you get to your CMS tab, and this is where you go to build out your libraries, to build up any additional tags if you want to help enhance the searchability of your content, where you can manipulate some of the settings to give some good organization standards and some good defaults for your new users that sign up or that join. So we'll just kind of take you through it all. So on the library aspect here, creating a new library is done right here. Just click the plus sign. And as you're creating a new library, you get the opportunity to give it a name and a description if you need it, if it helps. You can do a custom image for it, which is how the thumbnail shows up when I search content. Then you assign permissions, and you can invite users to work with you or to utilize your content. This invite is for users outside of your firm that already have a license of Nexus Suite on their side of things. You would send them an invite, and then they have access to this library. Now, when it comes to assigning permissions, there's a couple of different levels of permissions to work with. There are 3, actually. There's consumer, there's contributor, and there is manager. A consumer can only use the content. That is it. They can search for it. If they find something that they want to use, they can load it into their project. Done. That's what they get to do, which is, in many cases, perfectly fine. The contributor has a couple of other roles that it has access to. Contributors can potentially assist with assigning tags to your content to make it easier to find. Not the creation of tags, but the assignment to the content in the CMS itself. Can also leave comments and reviews and ratings on the families or blocks. Maybe they loaded one into a project and it didn't work very well. They can give it a review and put a comment in there, and then the admins will get that comment and be able to adjust accordingly. Manager can do just about everything else. Upload content, download content, make sure that the library is doing what it's supposed to be doing. But if you're already in the CMS admin or org admin role, you don't need to assign manager to something. This is just if you have your everyday kind of BIM coordinator team and basic user or power user, but you want to give them access to help manage the libraries. You can give them manager access. In this case, I've just made everyone a contributor, which gives them the ability, everyone at my firm, to use the content, help us with tag assignment, and comment and review the families and blocks and assemblies that are in our CMS already. If I wanted to take that away from them, I can. I can just change it right now to consumer, click update, and now everyone that is not in the admin space, they can just use it. That's it. That's all they can do at this point. Which, you know, it's entirely up to you how much access you want to give people. And that is all done in your user and group setup. I strongly suggest, if you want to manage what people are doing and what level of access they have to assist, that you do utilize groups. I don't recommend individually assigning users to your libraries to give them access, because, you know, if you've got anywhere more than, you know, a couple dozen users in your firm, now that's a couple dozen more things that you have to manage. If you can build a group or two, it makes life a little bit easier. One of the groups potentially is already built for you in the everyone group. We build this one out for you by default. You can rename it to anything that you want if it helps. But that can be used as your consumer level role. You just add that to a library or to your libraries, and now at least everyone has access that needs access. You can build out secondary groups for your BIM management team or your power users, or you know, maybe your project managers that you want to rate the content, but maybe they don't need to upload content. You know, you can play around with that a little bit and kind of see how well or how much access people need. But I do recommend creating groups and assigning your users to those groups by coming into the roles area and just adding users accordingly. You can choose what level of site administration that they will need here, or you can leave them all blank, right? You don't have to give anyone an admin ability here. We have, but you don't have to. And then this particular BIM management group then would go ahead, I could turn around and add it back to my library. So I'm going to do that real quick. And we'll grab my BIM manager group here. I'll make them managers of this library. Click add. So now all of the BIM managers that were in that list have the ability to add content, to update content, to tag it, to rate it, comment, and there's a couple other settings I think I'm missing. So we're going to go ahead and touch on that right now. So I'm going to hit update. And so that's kind of how you set up the library itself. We still have to add content to the library, and that is all done back in the CMS app itself. Here, if you're in the management level role or you're an CMS or org admin, you'll get an add content button. And within the add content button, you will see this window. Here, you can specify what your active design app is. You have the ability to specify what library you want to add content to. So let me just go ahead and grab my Revit content library that I had pinned at the top. I can choose if there are any specific tags that I want assigned to the content that I'm about to load in. You can do that on the front side, or leave it blank and just load your families in and let everyone else manage the tags themselves. And then you can go ahead and find a list of content. And the content itself, it can be, you know, if you've got it saved out on your network, great, that's where it's supposed to be. But effectively, I'll just grab this library here. Sorry. Where did my family? There it is. There it is. Here we go. And there's a couple of different ways to add the content here. You have add files where you can go browse for it. You can add a folder where, again, you go browse for it. The other way is to, in Windows Explorer here, find the content, drag and drop it in. And at this point, I can hit process. And it's going to take these families. It tells me what version they're in. If I need to add comment here, I can do so. It tells me what the parent source path is. And if there's any custom materials being used or document resources, those will effectively show up here as well, like a material, for example. If we want materials to work across the board, regardless of what office a user may be in, all of that stuff is available as well through the CMS. So in this case, none of this has custom stuff. These are all pretty generic families. But now I can hit process and it'll go and it'll show up in my Revit content library with the laboratory-HC tag attached to it. The third, but this is all just external Revit content right now. It doesn't have to be Revit content, though. It can be anything. If I go, if I just quickly remove all of this, I can grab an Excel document. I can grab image files. I can grab Word documents. I can make links. Excuse me, sorry. I can make links to web pages. I can add Power BI files. I can add text files. I mean, there is no limit. You can add your 3ds Max objects and SketchUp files or objects. There is no real limit to what can be stored up here. There's you can put your starter projects up here in Revit and start new projects from the files that live up here. And there's just a lot you can do with this and a lot of different files that can be stored. If you've got typical details or system families that you want to make available, we have an Add Revit Project Elements button here that allows you to extract the data from your Revit files. On the flip side, I'm going to back this up. On the flip side, if you had stuff from AutoCAD that you wanted to bring in, we have a CAD files button here where you can load in stuff from an AutoCAD DWG or from an AutoCAD tool palette, right? Or here's where you can also load up that custom command macro. And depending on what you're working with, you get an opportunity to browse to that element or make sure that it's open so that you can start bringing some of that stuff in. We offer up a ton of different ways to go ahead and add content to your projects. Then, based on this, now you've got stuff set up. There's one other thing that you get access to here, and that is back in the portal now. You get some metrics. So when you log into the portal for the first time, or anytime, it brings you to the dashboard. And on this dashboard, you'll have a CMS button here. You also get stuff about project analytics because you have Nexus Suite. That's part of PAL, different webinar. Go check it out. But you get CMS here. And within the CMS, you'll have access to a bunch of different information here. How many libraries do you have? How many tags are being used? How much content, and that's individual entities loaded up. How many have been marked as favorites? How much has been loaded in the last 30 days? And you can toggle this number to see how it's progressed over the last 30 days. Total file size of all things in your CMS. What's the total size of your database? How many users do you have by role? Who are those users? You get some metrics here and you can start getting into the search statistics, like how much are we getting searches on a daily basis? What are the common search terms? How many times are we getting a search that is empty, 0 results, right? How much content's being loaded in based off the number of searches. So, and then you can select a particular person, and their search terms and search frequency will come in as you click on their name. So if I click Sean, and he was very active, hasn't been so much the last couple of days, lots of searching. Dave, he had a really busy day a couple weeks ago or last week. So you can kind of get an idea of what they're doing, what they're looking for. For the searches without any results, what were they? You could get a little bit more information on what that search was, what they searched for, and maybe start to figure out why they got 0 results, right? So, and based on that, maybe you can start to provide ways to make that search successful, right? If you're getting a bunch of 0 result searches, maybe we need some more tags. Maybe we need to find a way to make it easier to search for, more safe searches maybe, right? So there's some good metrics here, and that you have access to. And in some cases, we're still working on it, so just want to don't freak out. Yeah, and then if you've also, it'll list all the tags in here and which ones are being found and which ones are used, not used. And then one last item that I want to point out that you have access to within your Nexus CMS is the family standards. Part of families, or the CMS and effective content management, is being able to review it and make sure that your content is up to a certain bar, is up to par, right? We don't want to make bad content available just because we can. So we have ways of setting up families checks effectively on your libraries to make sure that they're meeting your standards, and we're not, and they're using your shared parameter files, your subcategories. So you can come to the standards tab, configure a bunch of different rules. There's actually 2 pages of settings here. So you have the family rule sets here that you can set up and save. There's also a common standards tab here that allows you to specify what your parameter grouping options should be, what your valid and invalid name parts are, and any categories that have custom subcategories that need to be utilized. Configure those 2 pages, save it. It's all based off your shared parameter file. And then you can come back to your CMS tab, check any library, and run a quality check on them. Run that standards check on them. Make sure that your content is meeting your requirements. You will get that back in a report that you can review. You will also have the ability to download your data and view it in a Power BI file. So you have some options there for how you want to review that data. And then if your content has been rated, it will also show up in the details of that entity in the CMS. Now, at this point, we're only rating Revit content. We're still working on getting the other stuff put in place, but that would theoretically show up here in your details if it had a rating. Obviously, this one doesn't because it's a Dynamo file. So I just want to, that's kind of the final piece to the content management puzzle within the Nexus CMS, and another tool that we offer as part of that. So I know this was kind of a lot, so I appreciate you guys sticking with me today. We covered a lot. I talked about a lot, and but hopefully the Nexus CMS here is something that you guys see as beneficial in getting you access to your content and your projects and making it easier for you to provide your content to your end users, making it easier for your end users to find your content, and that you see some extra benefit and other features within the Nexus toolkit to help enhance that process. And with that, we're going to go ahead and end for today. I want to say thank you to you guys for joining me. It's been a pleasure, and look forward to seeing you guys at the next webinar.